The first time I saw him, I almost threw my coffee at his face. Not out of anger, well, maybe a little, but because the man who had destroyed my world with a single decision now stood smiling across from me, infuriatingly handsome, his presence demanding attention like a king entering a room. His name was Sebastian Thorne, Alpha of Thorne Industries, the man who indirectly orchestrated my brother's death and yet somehow made the thought of confrontation feel like a sin I wanted to commit. I never imagined that grief could taste so bitter yet strangely intoxicating. I had always believed the world was simple. My brother, my protector, gone, and the man responsible untouchable. But the moment our eyes locked across that crowded Manhattan gala, the air shifted. Sebastian's piercing blue eyes softened not with remorse. No, he wasn't that easy to read, but with a subtle curiosity, a pull I didn't want to resist. I remember thinking, this is going to be a nightmare. I am Dylan Hart, 26, scarred by loss, stubborn as a mule, and unfortunately, about to be thrust into a nightmare of legal obligations and twisted family politics that demanded I marry the very man who haunted my dreams. The letter came like a dagger in the post. A union for peace. Sign or lose everything your family built. It didn't matter that my gut twisted at the thought. The world doesn't negotiate with grief, only with power. Sebastian had that rare kind of charm that made people bend without even realizing it. A powerful alpha, yes, but also meticulously controlled, calculating, and infuriatingly magnetic. He carried himself like someone who had never doubted his place at the top. Yet I caught tiny fissures in his armor, the kind of cracks that hinted at humanity buried deep beneath his public persona. The night before the wedding, our paths crossed in the Thorne Industries penthouse for what was supposed to be a final discussion. I barely recognized the man behind the polished suits and tailored perfection. In the dim glow of the city skyline behind him, the tension was almost tangible, a magnetic pull of resentment, desire, and something more dangerous, curiosity. You know, you don't have to hate me, he said, voice smooth as silk, yet carrying an edge sharp enough to cut steel. I laughed, bitter and hollow. Hate is the easy part, Sebastian. Forgiving you? That's the impossible one. He smiled, and for the briefest instant the world seemed to stop. His hand hovered near mine, not touching, just the brush of air, and I felt my pulse betray me. What is happening? I thought, my brain screaming caution while my body betrayed me with every nerve alight. The first act of our forced union was chaos. Family dinners, legal meetings, and public appearances became arenas of silent war, eyes locking in brief skirmishes that left both of us breathless and longing. He would corner me in the kitchen of his mansion under the guise of discussing contracts, and I'd catch him staring at me with an intensity that made me tremble. It was maddening. How could someone responsible for such pain simultaneously draw me in with an irresistible gravity? We began to clash like fire and steel, our arguments filled with the weight of our pasts, yet beneath every sharp word, a strange undercurrent pulsed. Respect, fascination, an undeniable tension that neither of us dared name aloud. In the privacy of the Thorne Estate's rooftop, under the hum of the city lights, I started noticing details I hadn't before: the slight arch of his brow when he was frustrated, the way his fingers brushed mine ever so slightly, as if testing boundaries he hadn't dared to cross. And then, one night, when the city was quiet and the rain drummed softly against the glass, Sebastian did something no one could have predicted. He confessed without the grandeur of speeches, without excuses, that he had known my brother's situation was delicate. That accident, that night that shattered my life, it wasn't supposed to happen. Yet it did, and he carried that guilt like a hidden scar. I wanted to hate him. God, I tried. But his confession wasn't boastful or manipulative. It was painfully honest, raw with regret. And in that moment, I realized that my feelings were no longer just anger and grief. They were tangled with something forbidden, dangerous, and utterly irresistible. We stood there, rain soaking our clothes, hearts pounding with the kind of fear and longing that words couldn't articulate. My hands shook, his jaw tensed, and yet the universe seemed to conspire around us, pushing two broken souls into collision, daring us to survive the consequences of desire. Sebastian's lips hovered near mine, not a kiss, Not yet, but a promise of something more. Something dangerous. Something I wasn't sure I was allowed to want. I swallowed hard, the ache in my chest a mixture of fear, anger, and a burgeoning craving I couldn't ignore. And I realized then, amidst the storm and the city lights, that this forced union, this nightmare that had seemed unbearable, might just be the beginning of a redemption story I never expected to write. The days that followed were a whirlwind of stolen moments, heated debates, and silent understandings. Every glance carried 1,000 unspoken words. Every touch threatened to ignite fires neither of us could fully control. The mansion, once a prison of obligation, became our battleground and sanctuary simultaneously, a place where grief and desire waged silent wars. We learned each other in fragments. Sebastian's rare laughter in the dead of night, the way his hand would linger when he thought I wasn't watching, the tremor in his voice when guilt threatened to overwhelm him. And I, for the first time in months, allowed myself to feel, to want, to hope, even when the shadows of the past threatened to reclaim me. The city skyline became our silent witness, the lights twinkling like stars approving our clandestine journey. Each night, as we stood on the rooftop, our fingers brushing, our gazes locked, the impossible began to feel inevitable. I couldn't predict the future, and I certainly couldn't erase the past, but I could feel this fire, this undeniable connection burning brighter than the pain that had preceded it. Sebastian wasn't just the alpha behind my brother's death anymore. He was a man capable of remorse, of care, and of stirring feelings I had sworn I'd never experience again. And for reasons I didn't yet understand, I wanted to explore every dangerous inch of that truth, every forbidden touch, every whispered word between us. By the time the first month of our union passed, the mansion was alive with unspoken confessions, the kind that made the air thick with anticipation. Friends and family saw the decorum, the polite interactions, the public smiles. But behind closed doors, the tension was electric, intimate, and relentlessly consuming. Every encounter, every brush of skin, every shared glance became a small rebellion against the roles we were forced to play. Our romance was a battlefield and a sanctuary simultaneously, fragile yet fiercely alive. And in those moments, I realized something profound. Love, even when born from tragedy, even when forbidden and twisted, could heal wounds that hatred never could. Sebastian and I were no longer enemies bound by circumstance. We were two souls navigating the storm, two hearts learning to trust, to forgive, to surrender. The journey was perilous, filled with fear, longing, and the remnants of grief, but it was real, visceral, and breathtakingly human. And as I looked at him one quiet evening, his fingers brushing mine across the kitchen counter, the city lights casting a soft glow around him, I understood something I had never allowed myself to believe. Maybe the man I had been forced to marry was the same man who could teach me to love again. The night stretched on, silent except for the hum of the city. And as we stood there, two broken hearts daring to beat together, I realized that perhaps this twisted, painful, unexpected path was exactly where we were meant to be. Our story was just beginning. The following weeks were a lesson in controlled chaos. Every morning, I woke to the same realization. I was sharing a life with the man who had haunted my nightmares, and yet, paradoxically, also the man who now stirred feelings in me that were impossible to categorize. The Thorn Estate, once a cold fortress of polished marble and silent judgment, had transformed into a place where desire and danger coexisted in almost tangible tension. Sebastian moved through the house with the grace of someone born into command. His presence was everywhere, yet he knew exactly when to step back. We shared spaces without speaking, our silences heavy with unspoken words and glances that lingered longer than propriety allowed. The staff whispered, but we ignored them, locked in our private battlefield of emotional warfare. I spent nights wandering the vast corridors, trying to make sense of the swirling emotions that he provoked in me. Every brush of his hand against mine, every moment his gaze lingered a little too long, made my pulse quicken. I hated myself for it, hated that my body betrayed my mind, and yet, I could not stay away. Our interactions became a dance, dangerous and intoxicating. At family gatherings, we maintained appearances. Polite, composed, nearly indifferent. But behind closed doors, the air between us crackled with tension. A touch on the small of my back, a whisper in my ear, the way he would catch me staring, each act a subtle war of wills that neither of us admitted to losing. One evening, he cornered me in the private study, the soft light from the floor-to-ceiling windows casting elongated shadows across the room. I felt the weight of him before I saw him, the commanding aura of an alpha who was simultaneously dangerous and impossibly attractive. "You're thinking about him again," Sebastian said quietly, his voice carrying the faintest edge of amusement. "Who?" I asked, even though I knew he meant my brother. "Your brother. Don't think I don't notice the way your hands clench when his memory comes up, the way your jaw tightens. You can't hide everything from me, Dylan." I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that my grief was private, sacred, untouchable. But I didn't. There was something in his gaze, an honesty that I had never expected from him, that made my defenses falter. He stepped closer, his presence suffocating yet strangely comforting. "You're angry with me. I get it. You should be. But you're also curious. You're trying to understand why I am the way I am. And maybe what you're feeling isn't just hate." I felt heat rush to my face. "Curious," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He smiled, a slow, dangerous smile that made my stomach twist. "Yes, curious. And maybe afraid." Afraid of what? I wondered silently. Afraid of the pull I felt toward him, the undeniable attraction that both terrified and thrilled me. I shook my head, trying to focus on logic, on reason, on the rules I had always clung to. But my body ignored my protests. Our first real confrontation came unexpectedly. One rainy night in the Thorne Estate's expansive kitchen. I had been preparing a late dinner, trying to distract myself with routine, when Sebastian appeared behind me, leaning against the counter. His presence was overwhelming, filling the space with unspoken intensity. "You cook well," he said casually, though his tone carried a weight that made my pulse quicken. I turned to glare at him. "Thank you, I guess. What do you want, Sebastian?" He smirked, stepping closer. "I want honesty. And I want you to stop pretending you hate me so convincingly. It's exhausting for both of us." I laughed bitterly. "Honesty? You want honesty from the man whose decisions destroyed my family?" "Yes, and I'm offering mine in return." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "I did what I had to do. I didn't expect the outcome, but I own it. Every consequence, every life affected, including yours." His words struck me like a blow. For a long moment, neither of us spoke, and I realized I was trembling, not from fear, not entirely, but from the intensity of the moment. Something shifted between us then, a fragile truce built not on forgiveness, but on mutual acknowledgement of pain and desire. The following days were filled with small, almost imperceptible changes. Sebastian and I began to share spaces without conflict, our interactions carrying a subtle tension that neither of us could deny. We caught ourselves lingering in hallways, exchanging glances that spoke volumes, our proximity dangerous yet intoxicating. Then came the night that changed everything. We had been invited to a charity gala, a lavish affair filled with the city's elite. As we entered the grand ballroom, the lights dimming over crystal chandeliers, I felt his hand brush against Minea fleeting, almost accidental contact that sent shivers down my spine. "You're trembling," he whispered in my ear, his breath warm against my skin. "Not trembling," I said quickly, though my pulse betrayed me. "You're lying," he replied, his eyes gleaming with amusement and something darker, more intimate. "I like that you're honest with your body even when your words aren't. It makes you human." We danced in silence, the music enveloping us, yet all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. Each step was a negotiation, each brush of his hand an unspoken promise. The world around us disappeared, leaving only the dangerous intimacy that had been building for weeks. Later, on the private terrace overlooking the city, the rain lightly misting our skin, Sebastian's defenses fell for the first time. He admitted fears I had never expected, vulnerabilities hidden beneath layers of power and control. For the first time, I saw him not as an alpha, not as the man responsible for my brother's death, but as a man capable of tenderness, capable of remorse, capable of love. "I don't know if I deserve this," he said quietly, his fingers brushing against mine, the rain tracing paths down our intertwined hands. "You don't get to choose what you deserve," I replied, my voice soft but steady. "You get what you earn. And I'm willing to try." That night we crossed an unspoken line. Not in passion, not yet, but in trust. The barriers that had separated us, grief, resentment, obligation, began to crumble. We were no longer just Dylan Hart and Sebastian Thorne, enemies bound by circumstance. We were two souls navigating the storm, learning the dangerous, exhilarating language of intimacy. The days became a delicate balance of public appearances and private exploration. Every glance, every touch, every whispered word was loaded with meaning. The mansion, once a symbol of power and control, became a sanctuary of shared vulnerability, a place where we could be ourselves without the weight of societal expectation. Our relationship evolved slowly, painfully, beautifully. We argued, yes, but our arguments became a form of communication, a way to navigate the labyrinth of emotions we could not yet name. We discovered each other's fears, desires, and secrets in fragment-stolen moments in the kitchen, quiet conversations on the rooftop, shared laughter in the empty halls. Then came the night of the storm. Thunder rolled across the city as we stood together on the terrace, rain soaking our clothes, hair plastered to our faces. The tension that had been simmering for weeks finally erupted. Words failed us, and for the first time we allowed our actions to speak. Sebastian pulled me close, our foreheads touching, breaths mingling, hearts pounding in unison. "Dylan," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. I can't pretend anymore. Not with you." I trembled, unable to respond, my emotions a tangled mess of fear, desire, and tentative hope. He kissed me then, a slow, deliberate kiss that carried the weight of our shared pain and burgeoning passion. It was a kiss of apology, of longing, of promise. My hands clutched at his shoulders, my body pressed against his, and I felt an intensity that I had never known before, a dangerous, beautiful surrender. When we finally pulled apart, the rain still falling around us, I realized something profound. I was no longer trapped by hatred or grief. I was alive, fully, dangerously, beautifully alive, in the arms of the man I had once sworn to despise. From that night onward, our connection deepened. We learned the nuances of trust and desire, navigating the complexities of a love born from tragedy. The mansion became a haven, the city skyline a silent witness to our evolving story. Our moments together were intense, sometimes messy, but always real. Sebastian revealed layers of himself he had never shown anyone, and I, in turn, let go of the rigid walls I had built around my heart. Each argument, each embrace, each whispered confession strengthened the bond between us, forging a love that was as thrilling as it was terrifying. And slowly, painfully, we discovered that even the most broken beginnings could lead to something extraordinary. In the quiet moments, away from the scrutiny of family and society, we allowed ourselves to dream, to hope, to imagine a life not dictated by the shadows of the past but illuminated by the possibility of love. Sebastian was no longer just the man behind my brother's death. He was my partner, my confidant, the one who had shown me that desire could coexist with forgiveness, that power could coexist with tenderness, that love could emerge even from the most unexpected places. And I, Dylan Hart, once consumed by grief and vengeance, found myself opening to a future I had never dared to imagine, a future where two broken hearts could heal together, where pain could transform into passion, and where love, no matter how complicated, could ultimately prevail. The city lights sparkled below us, distant yet intimate, and I realized that we were no longer prisoners of circumstance. We were architects of our own story, two hearts daring to beat in sync amidst a world that had once seemed cruel and unyielding. Every day, every touch, every glance became a testament to our journey, a reminder that even in the darkest storms, there was light, warmth, and the possibility of redemption. We were no longer enemies, no longer defined by loss. We were Dylan and Sebastian, two souls entwined, navigating a path that was both treacherous and beautiful, dangerous and safe, heartbreaking and exhilarating. And in that fragile, perfect balance, I found a love I had never thought possibly, a love born from tragedy, forged in desire, and destined to endure. The morning after the storm, the city was quiet, washed clean by the rain. Sunlight filtered through the clouds, casting a soft golden glow over the Thorn estate. For the first time in months, I felt a calmness settle over many, a fleeting calm, but something enduring, a quiet sense of possibility that had been absent since the moment my brother died. Sebastian stood on the terrace, hands in his pockets, gazing at the skyline with a contemplative expression. When he turned and saw me, his usual controlled demeanor softened. He smiled, not the polished, distant smile of the powerful alpha the world knew, but a private, intimate one meant only for me. "Morning," he said simply. "Morning," I replied, stepping closer. The air between us was light, almost fragile, but charged with the warmth of shared understanding. No words were necessary. We had spent months speaking in glances, touches, and silences that said more than language ever could. He reached out, brushing a damp strand of hair from my face. "I think we can finally breathe, Dylan." I smiled, the tension I had carried for years melting just a little. "I think you're right." The following weeks were a revelation. For the first time, we lived not as enemies bound by circumstance, but as partners choosing each other in small, everyday ways. Breakfasts together in the sunlit kitchen, walks through the estate gardens, quiet conversations in the library all became rituals that strengthened the bond we had fought so hard to recognize. There were no grand declarations at first. Our love was subtle, gentle, a quiet revolution in a world that had demanded so much of us. Yet even in these small gestures, I felt the depth of our connection. The brush of fingers as we passed each other, the warmth of shared laughter, the comfort of his hand finding mine in moments of uncertainty. One evening, as the city skyline glimmered in the twilight, Sebastian and I found ourselves on the rooftop once again. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of the sea from the distant harbor. We stood side by side, fingers intertwined, and for the first time, the weight of the past felt distant rather than pressing. "I never imagined this," I said softly, leaning into him. "Neither did I," he admitted, resting his forehead against mine. "But sometimes the hardest paths lead to the most beautiful destinations." I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of his presence seep into me. It was strange how someone who had once caused such pain could now be the source of so much healing. Yet that was the paradox of our love. It was forged in fire, tempered by grief, and now flourishing in hope. Our intimacy deepened in a way that was both passionate and tender. Every kiss, every touch was layered with meaning, a dance of trust and desire that we had spent months perfecting. We learned each other's rhythms, comforts, and vulnerabilities, and in doing so, found a safety that neither of us had known before. Family events became easier, the public eye less daunting. We navigated the expectations of our social circles with a quiet confidence, knowing that our true connection existed far beyond the scrutinizing gaze of the world. When we walked together, side by side, hands clasped, there was a sense of unity, a silent declaration that we were no longer bound by obligation but by choice. One particularly quiet evening, Sebastian led me to the Thorn Estate's private garden, a secluded haven hidden from view. The moonlight bathed the flowers and pathways in a soft, silver glow, and the scent of night-blooming jasmine filled the air. He stopped, turning to face me, his expression serious but gentle. "I want to do more than survive this arrangement," he said. "I want us to build something together, Dylan. Something real. Something lasting." Tears pricked my eyes, not of sorrow, but of overwhelming relief and joy. "I want that too," I whispered, my voice trembling. He He smiled and took my hands in his. Then let's start now. No more shadows of the past. No more pretending. Just us. We stood there, hands entwined, the world quiet around us. And for the first time, I believed it. I believed that love could emerge from tragedy, that trust could be rebuilt, that hearts could heal. The following months were a journey of shared dreams and quiet triumphs. We decorated the estate together, planned trips we had always dreamed of but never dared, and discovered small joys in mundane routines, morning coffees on the terrace, late-night conversations under the stars, laughter echoing through empty hallways. Every challenge that had once threatened to tear us apart became an opportunity to grow closer. We faced public scrutiny, lingering grief, and our own insecurities, but we faced them together, hand in hand, hearts aligned. The final turning point came one crisp autumn evening. We had invited close friends and family for a small gathering in the estate gardens. Lanterns hung from trees, casting a warm glow over the gathering. Music played softly in the background, but all I could focus on was him, Sebastian, smiling at me in a way that made my chest ache with love. He took my hand, leading me to the center of the garden. "Dylan," he said, voice steady yet full of emotion. From the moment we met, I knew life would never be simple, but I also knew could be extraordinary if I was brave enough to let it be. I choose you, every day in every way. Will you continue this journey with me? My heart raced, tears blurring my vision, yet I felt a profound certainty. Yes, I said, my voice breaking with emotion. Yes, Sebastian, I choose you too. He pulled me close, our foreheads resting together, the world around us fading into insignificance. The city lights, the moon above, the gentle rustle of leaves all bore witness to a love that had emerged from the shadows, unyielding and triumphant. We kissed, a slow, deliberate kiss that sealed our commitment not just to each other, but to the possibility of healing, joy, and enduring connection. It was a kiss that spoke of passion and tenderness, of forgiveness and hope, of a future we would navigate together. As the night settled around us, I realized that our story born from tragedy, forged in pain, and tempered by longing had reached a place of fragile perfection. We were no longer bound by circumstance or grief. We were free, together, and profoundly alive. And in that freedom, in the quiet intimacy of our shared hearts, I understood something I had long feared I never would. Love, even when born from the darkest beginnings, could be luminous, transformative, and enduring. Sebastian held me close, whispering words that made my soul tremble. We made it through the storm, Dylan. Now, let's live. I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the anchor that had become my home. Let's live, I echoed, feeling a joy I had never known, a peace I had never imagined, and a love that would carry us through every dawn to come. The stars glittered overhead, the lanterns flickered softly, and the city slept peacefully below. Two hearts, once broken and battered, beat together in quiet triumph. And as we stood there, holding each other, I knew this was only the beginning of life of shared laughter, tender moments, and unwavering love. In the end, the impossible had become real. The man who had once haunted my dreams now held the key to my happiness. And I, Dylan Hart, once consumed by grief and vengeance, had found a love that healed, a love that endured, and a future I could finally embrace with open arms. We walked back into the house, hands entwined, hearts light, and spirits unburdened. The journey had been perilous, the path winding and treacherous, but love had prevailed. And for the first time, I truly believed that no matter what storms lay ahead, we would face them together undaunted, unbroken, and utterly, beautifully in love. The night closed around us like a warm embrace, and I knew without a doubt that this was where we were meant to be, together, always. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.